You are listening to Hillary Topper on Air. And now, here's your host, Hillary Topper.
Welcome to the show. Today, we're sitting down with someone whose story and work are nothing short of inspiring. He's an author, activist, and a powerful advocate for Native American communities. His debut novel, Saving KC, takes readers on a moving journey through addiction, recovery, and the power of forgiveness. And it's all set in a post-Vietnam America. Buzz, welcome to the show. Can you talk a little bit about your background and how it's shaped who you are today?
Well, that's a long story. As I'm getting a little long in the tooth, so my story gets a little longer. So I was born in Montana on the place called Fort Belknap, and that's on the Gros Ventre Reservation next to the Chippewa Cree Reservation, which is about 150 miles east of the Blackfeet Reservation. I have familiar ties to both. Born in Rocky Boy, which is the Chippewa Cree tribe, and my real dad is a Blackfeet. My mother was Chippewa Cree. They're both a little bit French because that's where most of us come from. Is down east, come from east across Canada, and eventually down south into Montana. Is kind of the route. Hudson Bay fur traders and such. And that's all intermingled and mixed up through history. And the two tribes that I'm a result of, I never did meet my real father. They were married, they eloped, my mother and my father, when they were very young, obviously. And then the families found out about it, and there was natural feuding between the Blackfeet and the Chippewa Cree back then at that time. So the families got in the middle of that thing and just kind of called it off, I guess you could say. But I was a result of that. And as a result of that, I never did meet my real father, my blood father. I knew who he was eventually, found out. But I was raised by a fellow by the name of John Desjarlais. And he was a native. He was a Turtle Mountain Chippewa. We're all scattered around Montana and sorts. But he was he's the guy I grew up with. Now, for better or for worse, everybody had their issues back then. We had government schools, mischief in everybody's existence. Kids were taken away and sent to those schools. And my parents, I call John Desjarlais my parent, was partially, his parents were partially a product of all that. So was my mother's parents and all that stuff. So there's a lot to go around in terms of generational BS that went on, and everybody was affected, and we're no different. And so there was in our home, there was a lot of violence, a lot of drunkenness, a lot of craziness. People would get shot and beat up, and I'm talking about husband on wife, spousal abuse. The kids would get smacked around, and all of those things went on. And
do you attribute that to what happened with the government and the way the Native Americans were treated?
well, it certainly had something to do with it. I mean, it wasn't, nobody gets a free pass in any of that. And the old saying is in recovery circles is you either pass it on or pass it back. So when you pass it on intergenerationally, we're all affected. Even some family members that I have today are still messed up. And they're my nephews and nieces. And but then there are others who managed to recover. Our family was almost entirely affected by drugs and alcohol. And I had 5 brothers and sisters. 2 of them have passed on by now. And, it's kind of like that. We we were living in Great Falls, Montana, which is, not a distance away, probably one of the largest cities in Montana at that time. And so here we are, Indian kids living off the reservation, going to white schools, and you're never a part of that. And then when you go back to the reservation, you're never a part of that. And so you're stuck in between. And every day is a fight. I mean, an actual fight with people. So that's kind of how it went for us kids. I mean, that was just the way it was. So there's a lot of stories in through that. And we eventually were assimilated to California. They pick you up and move you.
Yeah.
Here's the money, here's a job. So as a group, we wound up in California. And my dad got hurt down there, nearly cut his legs off with a saw.
Oh.
But he recovered. And I think it made him even more bitter than he originally was. But he managed to walk again and to work again. And we moved up to Washington State. And again, new land, new people, didn't know anybody, this moving around stuff. And we would move in the dead of night. The sheriff's coming, let's get a U-Haul trailer and go.
Oh my God, that's terrible.
It's like that. And I've written a couple of short stories about that. And one of my sisters says, "You're not going to show anybody that, are you?" I said, "As far as anybody knows, it's a fiction." She said, "Well, it better be, because nobody's going to believe it anyway." And that's kind of the way it was. I mean, so a lot of people are affected by this stuff. So that sets the pace for what happened to me. I was involved in the first draft in early 70s, the first selective service draft. My number was number 6. So I had a chance. So, but the strange thing was, just through a little seam in time, I managed to miss out. I got sent to Germany. But we were still subject to, at any minute, somebody tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Get on that airplane where you're leaving." So it was in that era. But I had a lot of cousins that were from the reservations that they just disappeared. And that's kind of how, where'd he go? "Oh, they came and got him yesterday, he's gone." And then they never come back because they're either killed or missing. And no one ever heard. But the ones that did come back, pretty rough go. So that kind of sets the stage for a guy like me. I wind up coming back here. When I was in the U.S. Army, my alcoholism exploded. I mean, I was just running crazy. And I get back here, and there's nothing for me to really do. So I worked as a logger for a couple of 3 years. And then I got a job for the railroad. I was driving spikes for about 4 years. Just all hard physical work. And I was up in the woods, and I wasn't getting paid by this guy, and I was in the unemployment office complaining about my sad state of affairs and whining and whatnot. When we're victims, we play it up. That's what I was doing. But there was this guy sitting here listening. He said, "How'd you like to be an electrical apprentice?" I said, "What?" I said, "I can't do that math." And the way my school was like PTSD from day one. All the craziness going on at home, and then you go in Monday morning and say, "Get your homework done." No, no sleep and traumatized and all that stuff. So we had kind of a different. Anyway, I got in the apprenticeship. I became an electrician, and the way I tell it, I was all these things. Then I became an electrician. Then I sobered up into this big mess. And then I started a nonprofit. I was involved in the start of a nonprofit. It's still going today. I was the board chair for a number of years, and I moved to the west side of the state. And someone else is doing that today, and that thing still exists. It's started off as an outpatient treatment for Native youth, because there was no place for them to go. And we knew how tough that was on kids. And so we started this organization. and it morphed itself into an Indian health clinic, which it is today. And they just built a new addition, what, $7 or $8 million? So it's just chugging along. I'm not there anymore, which is fine. Let other people do the work. I mean, that's somebody else's turn. And so that done, I started a business. It failed. I owed the IRS $1 million. Managed to stay in business. That business changed. I paid the IRS off. The business is the one we're in today. It is a relative success. We're still floating, and the IRS is all taken care of and all that sort of stuff. So that kind of sets the groundwork for that's a kind of the shorthand version of the craziness that went on.
Wow. So you have what a background. Now you ended up writing a book called Saving KC.
Yeah.
Could you tell us about this book? And, I mean, I'm sure you got part of the inspiration from your upbringing and your family, but give us a little backgrounds about the book.
The book is actually, and for whatever reason, that goes into another subject quite a bit. The book is about really Karen Carpenter. And a lot of young folks said, who is Karen Carpenter? She was a vocalist in the early 70s. Her and her brother were the Carpenters, and they were quite famous. She was probably, one could make the argument, the first original superstar, female. Her voice was unequal. I mean, and she always thought that her voice was no good, that she was never good enough. Like most of those people do. They have this talent, but they don't really realize it. And she was the first major pop star or star celebrity who passed from anorexia nervosa. She died at the age of 32, way too young. And so when I was first drafted in the Army, it was like, she was like a lot of people's original first crush, and she was beautiful. So I hadn't thought about her in years, and it was just the beginning of COVID, and I was monkeying around with YouTube stuff and killing a little time, and this stuff came back, and whatever happened to her? And at that time, I was trying to sober up, and about the time she died, and it was a little foggy about how all that happened. But anyway, I picked up the story and read into it, and read a couple of books on her, and that one thing led to the other, and I've got all this crazy enough stuff going on in my head. I'm an OCD like crazy. So I pull a thread and the way it goes. And so I pull. One thing leads to another, and then the obsession really kicks in. And then I become emotionally tied to this person for some doggone reason. And different people have different explanations for, oh, you were channeled, or was this, or what was that. All I know is that it was tied into me, and it touched something in me that got that one raw nerve going. And it's all it really took. And so I had this thing going on with nothing to do with it. I didn't know what to do with it. So I thought, I'll just write about, what if I wrote a story like that? How would you save Karen Carpenter? So I manufactured this story out of whole cloth. I took Indian kid out of Montana, make you wind up down in Southern California, going to that same college. And he doesn't know this Karen person. And I use different names in the book, obviously, to protect oneself. But as it goes, he has a girlfriend from a reservation down there. They're getting ready to get married. His mother passes away back in Montana. He freaks out, loses control of himself. He blows up his college thing. He gets drafted and sent to Vietnam, and he gets captured. Spends in captivity for 3 years. Then he's found, brought back. His betrothed is gone, married to somebody else, has a child. And his folks back home, or one's passed away. His father ran off to the hills. on the Blackfeet Reservation, and his brother's messed up, so he has nobody. So here's this traumatized guy trying to figure things out. And so that kind of sets the stage of the story. He meets this person in a church. He just went there just to kill a little time from the VA hospital and listen to the preacher preach because he thought maybe he needed it or he did something. But that's where he meets this Karen person. And she starts singing behind him as he's trying to play the piano with these broken fingers. And she just feels sorry for him. So she starts singing behind him. And he has no emotion left because it's all been just kind of ripped away. But that just blows him up and he starts crying and tears on the keys and all this stuff. So that has an effect on both of them. So that's where they meet up. And he's messed up. She's obviously got something going. And it kind of goes from there. And their initials wind up being KC. KC is for Karen Carpenter, but I used a different name for her, Caitlin Chapin, in the book. And I use the name Chapin. Interesting. Why'd you use that last name? You ever hear of Mary Chapin Carpenter? So there's a little things I throw in there. Anybody who reads the book, I would, if they know anything about Karen Carpenter, I would urge them just to go check her out first. Go on YouTube, check some things out, see what really happened, do a little exploration. You know, she was married. She always wanted to have children and not be involved in all this music stuff. I mean, it just was like that. And she wound up with this guy, marrying this guy who professed to be an industrialist. And in fact, he didn't have a dime. And he just took her to the cleaners and spent a lot of her money. And then she had to divorce him because he couldn't have children. He had himself fixed. And so these blows kept coming one after the other. And then her anorexia was really fired up and she started drinking syrup of ipecac because it can make you throw up. That's how she would purge. But it eats your heart away at the same time. And so that's what ultimately killed her.
Wow.
So
sounds like an amazing book. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. So let's talk about some of the other things that you're doing. So you mentioned about this nonprofit and it's called the Native Project. Could you tell us a little bit more about that? And also this work that you're doing with the Washington State prison system.
Yeah, the Native Project, as I said, still going today. It's a large staff operation now in the new building off to the side, which is pretty spectacular, I got to say. So the thing grew from just a humble beginnings of like a 2,000 square foot operation, and it's several thousand feet now. And it is an Indian health service tied in with the federal government, because at one point they came to us and said the other people that we had doing the Indian health contract stuff in the Spokane, Washington area blew the thing up and the money was being stolen and misused and all this stuff. Can you guys do this? Yeah, we can. We had a lot of discussion, but should we? Because it's a lot of responsibility and all this sort of stuff. But ultimately, we decided to take it on, and it's just been an amazing success. A lot of Indian kids, because they're off the reservations, nearby reservations, and that's how they were raised. When they have problems, they get sent to a kind of a white culture sort of a setting that really doesn't understand the intergenerational trauma that went on with a lot of kids and how that's passed on and how that presents itself. So what we did was get Native seniors and elders to come in and tell their stories, and we also infused it with the 12-step programs as a basic foundation for it, and we use that quite heavily. And with that cultural influence, with the 12 steps and all that stuff, we were able to fabricate something that worked. And so the more it worked, the better people liked it, and the more funding it received, and to do other things. And then I got busy with business, and I wound up over here. But at that time, back then, I spent 10 years with the Washington State prison system, taking 12-step meetings into the prison system. And, you know, real basic stuff, don't take anything out, don't take anything in, don't take anything out, you know, sit by the door, those kinds of things. And I originally went in there thinking, you know, very full of ego and all this stuff. Oh, we're going to fix these boys up and teach them how to stay sober and do all this wonderful stuff. And after my first meeting, I went out in the truck, went out, sat in my truck in the parking lot and just bawled. I mean, it's just had a hell of an impact. And today, it's not in the prison system, but I still go to one of the local jails on a monthly basis and take meetings in there. It's just something I do. I don't know if I'm good at it. I can't count the lives you save, but there must be one or two floating around somewhere. So it's kind of the deal. And I still work. I'm a little long in the tooth, but my daughter, she's in the next office, and she's 32 years old, 33, and she's going to be taken over eventually. And it's a big challenge right now because this thing is never a dull moment.
Isn't that the way it is with all business?
Yeah. So it's an interesting thing. I don't know how much time we have, but I'll try to slip this in. We had summer camps for the Native Project, and we would set up these summer camps, and we'd have an agenda, and we'd have speakers come in and all kinds of activities, fun activities, water and stuff. But there was a guy by the name of Andy Chelsea, and he was a leader of a clan up in Canada. They called the Alkali Lake Band. This was back in the 70s. And that clan was 100% alcohol affected.
Hmm.
And he was the leader of the band, I guess you could say. And he decided he needed to get sober, wanted to get sober. So he went to the next town over, found a 12-step meeting and started going. He managed to sober up over a year or two. And then his wife jumped on board, and then one friend, next friend, next friend. Pretty soon, a lot of people were involved. And then they had meetings on the reservation with the clan. And that group achieved 100% sobriety. Everyone got sober.
Wow, that's amazing.
So, and it's, I think there's a YouTube video floating around for the honor of all. And it documents that struggle and what they went through. And I invited Andy down to talk to the kids at one of these summer camps. And he agreed. And I picked him up at the airport there, and we stopped at a restaurant. And he whipped this book out of his back pocket. And he says, "Buzz, I found the answer. I found the answer." And I said, "What is it?" I didn't know him that well. I just met him. He said, "It's reincarnation, reincarnation." And I was inwardly rolling my eyes, thinking, "Oh, God," and then we picked up a nutcase. But he went out and he just did a wonderful job. And then years later, I had this business going, and I was complaining to one of my friends about employees and all this stuff, you know, like we do. And he said, "Why don't you have them do a Myers-Briggs?" And I said, "That's phony baloney, voodoo crap. I wouldn't have." He said, "You really think so?" He said, "You ever do?" I said, "Yeah, they did that to me, one of my employers back in Spokane about 10 years ago or so." And, you know, what happened? He said, "Well, it was like, I should have been like an artist or a priest or a psychiatrist. Do I look like an artist or a priest or a psychiatrist?" He said, "No, but maybe you're missing the whole point of the thing, you know?" You know, I was, those of you who know Myers-Briggs, I am an INFP. And if you look at an INFP, a male INFP were very rare, probably like 5% of the population. And so when that guy told me I was that, well, I didn't measure up with my peers because, you know, we were all roughed up project managers in construction. I worked railroad and forest and all that kind of stuff. And I didn't file my fingernails or that kind of stuff. So he said, well, take it again and see if you get the same thing. I said, oh, okay, just to show you. So I did, and it came out the very same way. What the heck is going on here?
Well, you are inspiring people through your messages, so I thank you for that. Um, Let me ask you a quick question. How could people pick up a copy of Saving KC?
It is available on Amazon. Saving Casey, initial K, initial C. And it's on Amazon. It's it's on Audible, available. And there is a website as well. savingkc.com. And you can read about my mischievous life there and read about a book, and there are several reviews there. It has very good reviews. And it's a story that ultimately wound up with two endings. I wrote the original ending, and as I thought about it, I thought, oh my God, you just didn't have enough guts to do the real ending that it needed. And so it wound up with two endings. The Audible version has that. You have your choice of getting the one version or another or both in the same book. So there's that. Most people like the original ending better. And I give people a choice to see what they want to see what they want to read, how to see that story.
Well, Buzz, it was a pleasure meeting you and an honor meeting you. I just want to say that you really are inspirational and I appreciate all that you've done. And I encourage all my listeners out there to pick up a copy of Saving KC, or you could go to savingkcthestory.com. This show was produced by Hillary Topper and sponsored by the Russo Law Group, Long Island's signature elder law, estate planning, and special needs law firm. For more information, visit vjrussolaw.com. And PlayTry, your multi-sport specialist for all your triathlon needs. They have so many opportunities, including franchising. If you love the sport of triathlon, check out playtry.com and learn more about opportunities, or if you want to shop there, check them out. They've got great prices and they've got amazing customer service.